Welcome to episode number 35 of the Wonder of Stuff Vodcast, broadcast live every week on Google Hangouts on air. This is the place where you'll find news, information and commentary on science, engineering and technology topics from the last week beyond, and anything else that interests us from inside our tiny little human brains. As ever, my name is John Gardner, and to help me out on the journey to knowledge is my colleagues, Richard Smith and Ross Davison. Say hello, chaps.
Hello, chaps.
Hello, chaps.
Jolly good. So, without further ado, let's kick on with this week's exciting episode. I'm hoping it's exciting. I'm just imagining it will be exciting. Anyway, we're going to kick off with Richard's topic, and the topic of dark trance cybersecurity. I know nothing about this.
Actually, Dark Trace is what it's called.
Oh, is it?
I was going to say, I thought it was going to be music there for a bit.
Okay, that's me typing badly.
That's all right. This is Michael Lynch. He's backing this. He's been one of the early backers for it. The guy who came up with the thing that was bought by Hewlett-Packard, I think.
Autonomy.
Yeah, Autonomy. Yeah.
That was the biggest white elephant.
They're suing him now about that.
I'm not surprised. It was a massive white elephant.
But yeah. Well, 11 billion. It was massively overvalued.
That is basically it's not all Autonomy's fault. I mean, HP believe the PR. So quite frankly, it's their fault. Anyway, sorry, Richard.
No, that's okay. But obviously, he's done very well out of that anyway because he sold it for 11 billion. So he's a successful entrepreneur. That's for sure. But his background actually is an interesting person because his background's natural sciences, electrical sciences. He did signal processing as his PhD, and he did a research fellowship in adaptive pattern recognition. So all quite sciencey, interesting stuff. But this is his latest venture. I don't think he was there very early on, and he's a chair of it, and he's steering it. But I don't think it's his invention, but it's cybersecurity basically, and it's just this week being valued at 64 million. So, and it's just kicking off really. But I thought it was interesting because it's kind of like a little bit to do with work that I've done in the past, and I've always wondered about the approach to hacking in that it's firewalls, and the approach is you try and stop people getting in, which is kind of old-fashioned in other securities, in that, you know, espionage is the thing that you do. You don't try and put up brick walls. You have to let the flow, and then you just get intelligence, don't you? And you counter spy and things like that. So this is basically an attempt to do that. So it's not firewalls. It seems to have an intrusion detection kind of aspect to it, and then it just tracks the hacker. So it is espionage basically, and what it does is it sets up honeypots in the network. So it's obscuring the target rather than trying to stop you getting to it, which just makes so much sense. Like, why haven't we done this before now?
So that means you keep them there and then try and, like you say, trace them, rather than bouncing them straight away and losing any track.
Yeah.
So So for a couple of questions. Dark Trace, is that the company?
Yes.
So Dark Trace is the company, and their service or product is this.
Well, there's not actually a lot about the product at the moment. The way it's been called is a technology, so I don't know if that comes in the form of. It's probably software with consulting services, I would have thought.
But it's. But we've always gone down the security path of strength and depth, haven't we? So the idea is that you're saying we just whack a firewall up. Well, that's part of it. It's not the whole thing. The idea is that the software should be secure, and then you've got proxies or reverse proxies. You've got firewalls. You've got intrusion prevention or intrusion detection. You've got all that sort of gateway, antivirus, gateway perimeters. That sort of stuff. Packet sniffing. So
but apart from intrusion detection, everything you mentioned there is a firewall in the sense that they're all attempts to block access. So I mean firewall in the common sense of the word rather than a hardware firewall. They're all attempts to block access, aren't they? So like you see, you make the code less penetrable, but you're still changing the code to put up a barrier.
So
you're saying don't bother with that.
So you're basically saying that they're putting up stuff that's easier to crack, and therefore people will go after those little honeypots rather than the rest of your network. Is that the idea?
Well, it seems as though, but that makes it, in security terms, non-IT security terms. Well, even in IT, sometimes hiding the code is better than trying to stop someone getting it. So the code you're trying to get is not. Well, I guess that's what encryption is in a sense. It's not meaningful. So anyway, I'm going a bit off track, but basically, instead of trying to create a defensive wall, you uncover the activities of the hacker, and you learn by that. You catch them, and the deterrent is that they are much better. They're caught more often with this approach, and then they are prosecuted, and that is the deterrence rather than a technological deterrence.
Yeah, and in the longer term, it's a better deterrent, and you're actually getting someone, you're actually catching someone.
Yeah.
Rather than them being out there and you're always vulnerable.
Yeah.
So the more you can catch, the more you can deter, the better, I suppose.
But you imagine that even if it's a state-sponsored hacking, then the same principle applies. Okay, you don't prosecute them, but a lot of the times with the ones where the security's rock solid, they still don't seem to know who it was. So they're like, well, China suspected. I don't know how much of that's PR and whatever, but they don't seem to know for the language that you read in the press. They don't seem to know for sure. And I guess this is more of an attempt. Well, you'd know for sure.
Yeah. China
were in the moment they were in, rather than after the fact, and it's more that, I think.
So apart from the fact that it's publicizing it's what does it say? It's revolutionary technology. It does seem like that it's more of a digital detective solution. So basically, it's highlighting the trace of anybody, and it says as well internal access as well. So anybody who's the guy who you got paid minimal wage who sits in the post room, but listens to everybody's password as
which is the same principles you learn as a system administrator, don't you? When you're learning about basic security, one of the things you learn is you don't rely just on the hardware, stopping people, the firewall hardware, stopping people getting in. You also have to take threats, like you say, disgruntled employees, an equally large threat, isn't it?
It's interesting. The last time that the pen testers were in a BT, and we put them in a separate room on the third floor, and the first thing he says, well, you can tell you've been pen tested before. He says, because normally they shove us next to the IT support desk where all we're hearing is passwords. And we're just thinking, I will not even bother testing that. We'll just use that password. Yeah. And when we put them in a closed off room where you couldn't hear anything, it was like, oh, well, we really are going to have to. But yeah, social engineering is massive now in security. It's more than anything else. Social engineering is the way that they'll get the most bang for the buck in terms of cracking.
Speaking of passwords and cracking, well, actually, it's probably more not a hack, but a coding error. I think I was reading something the other day about. If you know this, there was a Hotmail when it was around. It was still
around. My wife still uses it.
Is it still around? I thought it was not.
Well, Outlook.com, but it's what is it? It's the same stuff.
Exactly. There was a massive security hole. When was it? 2009 or something. Where for a 4-hour period, you could log into any account using the password E. So that's obviously someone's put a, I do this occasionally when I'm doing development. You might just bypass the password so you can log in as all of the accounts in a development system. That's somehow managed to make it live.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oops.
No, well, you would you'd really have to question their regression testing then.
Yeah, definitely.
But so interestingly, on this very topic, I'm going to you'll have heard of OWASP.
Oh yeah. I look at that quite a lot actually.
Yeah, well,
I've been to a couple of their presentations actually. I went down.
Well, actually, this is what I was just going to say. They've got one on Tuesday in Newcastle, and
all right.
Yeah, and I tell you who's speaking. Richard will know this. You know Andrew from Onyx, the guy who.
Yeah.
He's speaking about honeypots.
I follow him on Twitter actually.
He's
Andrew
speaking
Waite.
about.
Is it Andrew Waite?
Andrew Waite, yeah. He's speaking about honeypots. And the other guy is George Schlach. He works with me actually. He's started at Sage, and he's got a background in security, and he's going to talk about the security implications of Docker and other containerization.
Right.
So that should be interesting. So it's
I'll see if I can get to that because
when's that on?
When's it on?
Yeah,
it's on Tuesday night, 6 o'clock till 9 at it's Newcastle University building. Hang on, let me have a look.
So Andrew's one of the speakers, is he?
Yeah, he is. Yeah.
Yeah, because he's really passionate about security.
Yeah, I mean, when he was an engineer at in the data center, wasn't he? At Databanks when I first knew him, and then he's obviously got into security.
I think he was like the more senior engineer normally, wasn't he?
Yeah. I'm desperately trying to find it in my Gmail. Where's the bloody calendar in Gmail? How do you get? Oh, there, calendar.
The University Ellison building.
That's the one.
That's in the university.
Yeah, so
I might have a look. I wouldn't mind that.
You just have to register.
Well, we'll stick it on the show notes.
Yeah, so it's the Ellison Building EBA 002, and that's from 6 till 9 because our security guy at Sage, who's in the LSM team that I'm in, he runs helps run the OWASP Newcastle chapter. So.
All right.
So
I know a few people who are know through Twitter, but know through attending the events and keeping their details, who are quite high up in that. Well, I don't know, saying high up, it's kind of an open organised thing, but who are the sort of organisers of it?
Yeah, so by all means, come along. I'm going, so it'll be quite cool.
But yeah, back to this dog trace. It does seem much more of an effort to sort of formalise those kind of approaches, and like you say, looking at social patterns and stuff, and formalise it as a solution in some way.
So there's obviously some technology in there.
Yeah.
But I like you say,
it's I did write it down. I'm sure it's something that Cambridge University are doing to do with a mathematical model. So it's based on that. So obviously that's the software aspect.
This is what I think. This is what I suspect. It'll be something that sits on your network and just sniffs stuff.
Yeah.
As part of it, and then I suspect also there'll be a big consultancy section of it. It'll be like you buying a total service from them.
Yeah.
That's what I think.
I think it'll just be a new way of looking at intrusion detection. Basically, it's a much. It sounds. I mean, they haven't released any technical details, and I don't know even if they will. I mean, that may be the whole patent, and that may be the thing that they keep quiet. But I think it sounds really interesting how they're going to. Because obviously, it's getting a lot of investment, so the people in the know are taking it seriously. And when you look who they've got working for them on the directors, Lord Evans, he was Director General of MI5. He was the most recent director. Andy France was former head of defence at GCHQ. So got some sort of heavy hitters, getting on board with it. With a relatively small project.
Are we sure it's not just some elaborate plot to get people to turn off the firewalls so the government can see all the data going through everyone's systems?
It's very interesting because if you look at some of the example anomalies that they've found, some of them are like, well, what's that one? So it tells you if somebody's mining bitcoins, trying to mine bitcoins. It tells you if somebody's using a Cyrillic keyboard, so they might be Russian. Tells you.
But it's profiling in the same way that police and security services do profiling.
Use of Tor. If anybody on the network's using Tor, it's interesting. It's interesting, but I still think how much of it is genuine, unique technology, and whether some of it is just like pen testing or on another.
Well, what do you two think of pen testing? Because I've been involved with it a fair bit now, and not doing it, but I do do the sort of in-house pen testing where I'm trying to second guess what they're going to look at and do a regular approach to sort of intrusion detection, but knowing what the risks are on our network. I've never found them entirely useful.
In terms of pen testing, I do find it surprising. I've twice come across one. I think was when we all worked together, and more recently I have where whoever's doing the testing asks you to turn off things to do tests, which I always find strange.
Yeah,
It's like, well, that's what it's there for, to stop this. Well, you have to stop because we can't test it. It's like, what?
The last pen test that we had, and I suspect this is because the pen tester wasn't very good or wasn't experienced enough, did ask us to punch holes through the intrusion prevention system. Yeah, and it's like, no, of course not. I'm not going to do that.
See, this is an ongoing argument that I've had with former employers, is that to me is a security assessment. That is not a penetration test. Yeah. Penetration test is a white hat hacker trying to get into your network by any which means. Okay, you want to make some exceptions. For instance, if you don't have granular control of your network, you don't necessarily want a brute force attack. So if you're using Amazon or some cloud provider, obviously you don't want a denial of service on your hosted platform. Yeah, obviously. But short of that, like I say, a talented penetration tester for me shouldn't need you to really turn anything off. Yeah. Yes, you might need to whitelist some IPs and things like that. But they should be able to get around it, shouldn't they? Otherwise, it's not a real life emulation of what would happen.
Mm-hmm. But what they're saying is that they're testing the fact, they're testing all of your strength and depth. So, if you've got an intrusion prevention system and that is at the gateway, at the network perimeter, and that is protecting you, that's great. What happens if that fails? Mm-hmm. So then that's what they say anyway.
I get that. I just think it's you. Don't get us wrong. It's infinitely more useful than doing nothing, and people who do nothing, it's all one shot. But I just think it doesn't give you that much in the sense of, if you let them in and they say, oh, well, your Apache version's out of date, well, that's fine, but you haven't really told us what the real world risk is there. You've said, okay, it's got a CVSC or whatever it is, score of 9, so it's deemed risky. You can do buffer overload attack.
That's a bad pen tester. That's a bad pen tester. A good pen tester will tell you a risk and tell you an impact and tell you how to.
Well, what you want to know is what they were able to do without being let in.
Well, then you should get that. We've always got that. We've always got full reports, and it tells you exactly what we managed to do, how they did it in most cases, what the risk is.
Who does your pen testing?
I don't know. I'll not tell them. I'll not say.
Right.
It's Sage or at BT. I only know the ones at BT. And
no, I just meant if they were big corporations, you'd be okay to say the name of them if you've.
No, they're not big corporations.
Oh, right, okay.
No, they're. I think
that's the thing. The ones that I've been involved with have been the big players in the game, and they haven't been very good.
The only real big ones I know of PwC.
Well, I'm not going to say because I'm making derogatory remarks.
Yeah, you are.
I'll say something where I'll get sued. You're not going to get sued.
I tell you what. Let's just say allegedly a lot.
Yeah.
Lots of things allegedly happened. Some of those things.
You're right. If you did a proper penetration test, that's useful. And this is, again, going to, I suspect, its success, whether it becomes well regarded within the industry, is going to come down to, is it well run and does it give you what a good penetration test does, but from an alternative viewpoint? Or if it's implemented badly, it may be just as useless as a bad pen test, basically.
Yeah, and the thing is, though, most of the pen testing, the people who pen tested us as BT, they actually had a seminar to tell us how to get through the OWASP top 10, because quite frankly, most of the stuff is still OWASP top 10 stuff.
Yeah.
And they were basically said, look, we get bored doing the OWASP top 10. We want to do the interesting stuff where the automated scripts won't work and we have to actually apply some of our brain power to it. That's the interesting stuff. So here's how to stop the OWASP top 10. But yet we still have Sec 1, we still have testing. And that came up all the time, and it was vendor software. A lot of the software vendors, I'll probably say allegedly again, just in case I have to, in public sector software are appalling. It's the worst written software I've ever seen. It's like Swiss cheese. It really is.
Yeah.
And there's no excuse for it. It's basic 101 bad programming.
Well, that was one of the themes that really came through when I went to OWASP Leeds, was that you have to consider the whole solution from this perspective. It's no good just writing the code, implementing the platform, etc., and then going, right, now how do we secure it? You need to be thinking of that as you implement. Implement it in a secure fashion, rather than trying to tag something on after the fact. If you tag something on after the fact, it's never going to be very good. It's going to be a perimeter security, and that's it. And then if someone gets through that, it's completely open.
As part of your test rig, before you release software, you should be able to stop SQL injection. You should be able to check for that. You should be able to broken authentication, session management. You should be able to check for cross-site scripting. You should be all of that stuff. Sanitizing data, all of that. That should be part of your coding regime.
Yeah.
Anyway,
just to finish it off, it sounds interesting. If it has the potential to revolutionise that industry, I would say. And for me, I don't know a lot about it, how it works yet, but if it was a publicly listed company, I would be buying share options in it right now, because whether it does get well implemented or not, it looks like it's going to be massive to me.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think we're in for another sea change in security testing and security analysis, and I think this might be it.
Yeah.
This might be the start of it. Anyway, so yeah.
Hopefully we're not disappointed.
No, excellent. Right, I'm going on to my story now, and I've called it "Cracking the Car." And basically, there's been a couple of stories in the news. Well, there's been one main story in the news over the last week, and it all revolves around one particular item on the Internet of Things. You remember when we talked in January about all of these things that were going to come this year? And Internet of Things was one of those things that we talked about. For me, it's just the gratuitous slapping of TCP/IP stacks on any consumable piece of kit. But you've got things.
You both made that point at the time. I think you both said, counter to my point of, well, just hide everything on the internet. You were both saying, well, awesome things unnecessary and awesome things risky to just do that with.
Exactly. Well, I mean, so far on this really, really stuff that obviously we couldn't live without internet connectivity. We've got the iKettle, which is great because we've got an app to see what the temperature is in the kettle, but we still have to go in the kitchen and make the tea.
Yeah, that's fantastic.
We've got the LG Think fridge with the Q instead of the K. We've got the Samsung smart washing machine. We've got the Philips Hue lights where you can change.
I've got them.
Have you?
Yeah, I've got them.
Oh, and what's the fridge doing?
The fridge is telling you that you run out of stuff.
Oh, right, yes, of course, yeah.
I was talking to someone about that the other day, saying that would be great, and that sounds like really good. How does it tell you need stuff? Is it got like NFC tags and everything or something?
I think it would be great if it was NFC or if it was and stuff like that, but or RFID and stuff like that. But I don't think it is. I think there's a barcode reader and you have to scan things when you put it in. I think, or QR code reader.
Not very intelligent.
No, not really. We're not at that stage yet. We're just like, But this is my very point, actually, because one of the big ones is, of course, internet-connected cars, and it's this very story that I've got that was what's happened this week, and this is basically there's two stories. The first one has been everywhere on the news, and that is came out on Tuesday, and we found out that Charlie Miller and I think it's Chris Valasak, who are black hat hackers, managed to take control of a Chrysler Jeep and push it into the side of the road because they basically got into the engine management system and applied the brakes. And all of the
was there someone driving it?
No, it was. I think it was on a test rig.
Oh,
it was
right.
on a test road. It wasn't on a road. So there would have been somebody driving it, but they just wanted to see if they could do it, and they did it. And all they knew was the IP address. Now, how are they doing this? Well, because a lot of the top end cars, not just Jeep, not to pick on Jeep. No, BMWs have them as well, and I presume Audis and all those have them. Is they'll have a SIM in the car itself, and that's certainly the BMW. One of my colleagues had a BMW 5 Series, I think, and it had primarily the way they use it is for if you have an accident, it actually calls the emergency service automatically, but it does other things as well, and part of it, I think they can update stuff as well, on the air updates. So basically, this SIM, obviously, if it's connected to the internet, it has an IP address. And now this is the main core. The two stories that I've got, this one and the next one, it's the first part of this. They're getting the data across and breaching the infotainment center, because both of these stories both breach the infotainment center. So that's your digital display with your maps and your DAB radio and all that stuff. This seems to be the weakest point. This seems to have absolutely no security or authentication on it whatsoever. And
well, is it not just that it's got? I suspect. I mean, I don't know anything about it, but I'm suspecting that maybe it's got the largest attack surface because it's got so many integrations into it that it may just be the softest target in that sense.
Well, it's possible, but in this particular case, there was no authentication on the first part. So basically, as soon as they had the IP address, the rest of it was fairly easy to do.
Yeah.
And then, of course, once they're in the infotainment center, they'll just pivot off and try and find other stuff, which is what pen testers what we were saying before. That's how they'll do. If they're trying to get into an end-tier architecture, they hit the public side, they hit the presentation tier, and then they try and pivot off into the application or the data tier.
Yeah.
Well, this is all they've done. They've hit the infotainment side, and they've tried to pivot off into the engine management system, or they've tried to connect any. I'll use the term API, but whatever connection between the infotainment and the API and the engine management, and this is how they got this to basically crash. The other story, which hasn't been basically what they're going to do. There's a Black Hat conference in America, and they're going to tell you exactly how they did it, because they haven't told you what vehicle. They haven't told you various bits of it.
They've recalled the car, though, haven't they?
Ah, well, here's what they're doing. Right, Chrysler have, even though they've developed all this system, they still haven't worked out a way of updating it. So this is what they're going to do. Right, I would assume that if you're gonna have a system like this, you'll be wanting to update on the air,
especially if it's connected to the internet. Surely.
Yeah. But no. There's no way of doing it on the air. What they're actually considering doing is sending USB sticks out to all of the Jeep owners to plug it in and then update it themselves, or they can download it from their website.
Well, that's all they're doing. They're not recalling it.
No.
Is it? Are BMW recalling their cars then?
Possibly.
You've got to recall that, though. People can remotely crash it, and they're not recalling it.
Well,
is it like the Fight Club thing where they're
oh no! So it has recalled. It has recalled its software. It has recalled its cars. It has recalled its cars. But they're still considering whether they should send out all these USB sticks. But if you go back to the main dealer,
you couldn't carry on with that. So you'd just get sued as shit, especially in the States.
It's very hot, right? It's reason. Well, okay, that's one thing. But the second story is another one that came about on Wednesday. Completely different set of people over in the UK, NCC Group, and there was an Andy Davis who was he's the spokesman from the NCC Group, and he managed to get the similar thing done, but he used a DAB radio. So it's brilliant. This is great. It's great. It takes me back to World War II when they used to have to do radio signals and jamming and stuff and like that. But this is what he did. He got he's got a laptop with some digital software on. He got a small DAB transmitter, which I think you can get for about £500. And what he tried to do, and he did this on another test rig, so it was not on the public road, but that it again hasn't told us what car in this case hasn't told us what car he did it with. But basically, he finds out the most popular DAB radio station, say Radio 2, whatever, Radio 2. He'll transmit Radio 2 back out on the same frequency as Radio 2's on anyway on DAB, but of course you don't get the frequency up unless you choose the options. So most people wouldn't see the frequency. So they'll just see BBC Radio 2 and hear what Radio 2 is producing. But because they're closer, obviously it's swamping the other station.
Yeah.
And he can basically drop a payload in the digital signal on the DAB radio and drop it into the infotainment center. Do exactly the same thing.
That's class.
Brilliant. It's great.
Yeah.
And again, they're going. These guys in NCC are going to the same Black Hat conference, and in the States, and they're going to do the same. They're going to say what car it was and everything. So there you go. Two things. And this brings me back of the Internet of Things and the fact that I don't know whether it's just the developers who have been told, oh, let's get this damn thing on the internet, and then they come back and say, oh, well, I've implemented it, but I'm not really happy about the way I've implemented it, and some of the things, can I like have another month? No, it's out. Too late. It's got to go live tomorrow.
On the first one of controlling the brakes.
Yeah.
Why would that be on the same? I mean, obviously there must be like fly-by-wire type brakes, or is it just power-assisted brakes? Why would that be connected to a
because
to
some of the
is that
because
like, it's not engine management or anything. So why would so they can light up the thing?
But
are the dashboards connected by?
Well, it's the same thing. Modern cars, if they detect you're going to crash into something, apply the brakes for you.
That's it. That's exactly what it is. I mean, you wouldn't know with the upper end of the car spectrum there, Ross.
No.
But they have infrared detectors on the front, and if you're getting too close, they'll slam the brakes on.
It's triggering the.
Yeah.
Okay.
But if you're going down the motorway at 70 mile an hour, and somebody arbitrarily slams on the anchors, it's not going to be very good.
No. I mean, I have thought before about, like, if you have a car that has power-assisted steering, power-assisted brakes, these automatic brake things, and an automatic gearbox, you could completely remotely control that car. You could make it into a radio control car because it can effectively drive itself. All the bits are there, and this is sort of proving that. Because you could make this, you could make the steering wheel go completely to the left.
All you need, if you want to crash a car, all you need to do is, I mean, a rear-wheel drive car going around a tight bend, if you apply full brakes in that situation, it's going off the road, that car. So that's obviously what they've done, isn't it?
But there was other, and this is what worries me. It's like people who are writing software for web access, like you, Ross. You know a lot of the implications of doing this and putting something on the internet. Because that is the core. A lot of these developers who are doing this type of software and putting it on the internet as a secondary for the main device.
Like you say, it's just been bolted on at the end. Oh, we'll just open it up to the internet.
Oh, look, it's on, it's working. Right, there you go, great.
Yeah.
Now, a couple of years ago, I heard a story where they were saying that I think it was traffic lights in London, where some guy, they have these things these pads underneath the tarmac to let ambulances and fire engines through. They switch to the red. They'd reckoned that they actually stood next to it, and with a bit of software and a small radio transmitter, they could actually change it, change the traffic lights as much as they want, because there was no authentication again on them. Yeah. So that's the sort of stuff.
You would think, though, that how maybe this is too sophisticated for this deployment at the moment, but how power stations and stuff, they're on a closed network.
Yeah.
In the sense, and sometimes the closed doesn't mean necessarily air gapped. it can actually be like publicly accessible, remotely accessible, but it's just written on a proprietary protocol, and it doesn't use whatever. It doesn't use Ethernet or TCP/IP or whatever it is.
But isn't that just security through obscurity?
Yeah, but I'm saying, why is this? I don't get how they've ended up in a situation where it hasn't gone through rigorous enough testing, which, by the fact that someone's been able to do this, it clearly hasn't.
I just think it's naivety that people just genuinely don't think that people would do this.
I just can't see how that. I can't see how that could be a case in a huge company like Chrysler. How? I mean, they've got lawyers, and how that hasn't come up. I just don't get it.
It's Chrysler. It's Fiat. Fiat owned Chrysler. So if they've done that with Jeeps, then all the Lancias in Europe, all the Fiats in Europe, they'll all have the same bugs in, potentially.
Well, if they've got that system.
Well, there will be, because they use common components from a...
Presumably it's only certain models that are the high-end models that have got this, though.
Yeah, but there's high ends of all of their models.
Yeah.
You know, it's the system's called is it Uconnect Cellular Network? So I presume that well, in Europe, Lancias are their upper end mark. So I presume all the Lancias will have this on. Lots of American Chryslers will have this on as well. So
I'd like to get Spotify in my car. That would be quite handy.
Well,
but then my car's too old for that sort of thing.
Yeah. Anyway, they reckon that this particular thing affects 1.4 million cars.
So it's got a big impact then.
Yeah. So interesting. But the USB stick.
But wasn't it? I'm sure the recall thing that I've seen was 1.2 million being recalled. So are they all that car then? Or are they just all the affected cars?
Well, it's the people who have affected it is not actually Fiat Chrysler. It's the U.S. National Highway Traffic Safety Administration.
All right.
So it's not the manufacturer. The manufacturer still is saying there's not a big risk.
Are they just in denial about it? Is it just?
I'm sure they are. I'm sure they are. So it's what they think at the moment. The cars that are affected, all the Chrysler is actually Dodge Ram. So every Dodge Ram that's been made since 2013, every Jeep Grand Cherokee, and Dodge Durango made from 2014, every Dodge Charger, Dodge Challenger, and any Dodge Viper sold in the past 2 years. That's quite a lot of cars.
If you put the full brakes on a Dodge Viper, you're going to be in trouble.
It's true. It's true. So, yeah, I mean, that's one of my main issues with the Internet of Things. It's just not being thought through.
But it's a bit like you said. But yeah, it's like what you said about my topic. It's the implementation. If it was well implemented, it wouldn't necessarily be an issue. The fact that they're on the internet. Lots of things that are highly secure are on the internet. So your banking's on the internet. It can be made fully secure. You just got to do it right, haven't you?
Yeah, that's true.
Because, I mean, if you think of you mentioned a few of the things that are going online. If you think of something simple like the kettle, right? If there's a way of connecting to that and turning the kettle on, you could burn down someone's house. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But a kettle, you can't imagine they're going to think. I mean, they should do. They're putting it on the internet. They're not going to think of doing that it's going to be a massive security risk. You know what I mean? Like you think with a car would think that through, but I think
as well. I think I'm not entirely. The thing with putting a car on the internet is it's basically directly going onto the public internet. It has its own network inside, and then it goes through. It's natted to a public IP address. With kettles, washers, and etc., it'll be on your. Presumably, I don't know because I haven't got one of these things, these pointless things. But I presume it goes on your own Wi-Fi network.
Yeah, but it will be externally accessible through some sort of web app.
Yeah, well, possibly.
They always are.
But then you would have to.
My Hue lights have got a little. It's got a little white box that is its own little Wi-Fi hub type thing. but I'm sure there's a way of connecting to it over the internet. I haven't looked actually.
Yeah,
Well,
but if your internet router is blocks all these ports coming in, because my blocks all the ports unless I explicitly open them.
Yeah, you'd probably have to do a port forwarding to actually access.
Well, can you not remember the big scandal with webcams? Those webcams, and they were all the cheap ones basically were all the same Chinese model underneath. They were all branded with different companies selling them, but all the cheap webcams, IP cams, this is, were publicly accessible, and there was basically a site in China or Russia or somewhere, where they had. Well, I don't know if it was. That looks more like a higher end model, is it?
It's a D-Link. But
I think D-Link. Actually, I think D-Link might be affected by.
Yeah.
But
there you go.
But people were using them for their baby monitors and stuff like that. And you
Yeah,
could go on
there
this
was a
site,
group.
and they had a list of all open webcams, and it was millions. You
There was a Google search you could do, which you would just return on Google because Google would index them.
Well, yeah.
I did watch a great video a couple of weeks ago of someone had hacked into an office worker's webcam and started playing. I think it was "Never Gonna Give You Up" by Rick Astley out of the webcam, and just recorded the bloke phoning up IT support and trying to say, "There's Rick Astley coming up my webcam," and them going, "What?"
Have you tried turning it off and turning it back on again?
You just unplug it.
Yeah, exactly.
Anyway, right. So whizzing through, time is ticking on. So let's go to the last topic of this evening, which is to Ross, and he's going to talk about Earth 2.0.
Earth 2.0, yes. So this is something that was announced on Thursday this week, just gone by NASA. Basically, they're saying, and it's been reported as them saying it's a planet more like Earth than any other. So it's been dubbed Earth 2.0.
Is this Kepler thingy B?
Yeah, it's called Kepler 452b, which is basically it's the Kepler Space Telescope, and the 452b will just be the number it was allocated.
Because
so it's not very imaginative name.
We've already talked about the Goldilocks zone, haven't we? At some point.
We have, yeah. So this one basically, no, they're saying it's more like Earth than any other. So there's certain things that there's lots of pictures in all these news stories now. Obviously, we don't know what it looks like. It's far away. They discovered it using. We've talked about the ways you can discover planets as well. There's the two ways. There's the wobble of the star. There's the transit method where it goes in front, and that's how they discovered this. And in terms of similar to Earth, they basically think it's about 6 billion years old. Earth's about 4.5 billion, so similar. It is bigger than Earth, about 60% bigger than Earth, but it orbits at a very similar distance to its parent star, and the star is the same class as the Sun. So its orbit is 385 days, so it's about 5% longer than Earth's. So it is quite Earth-like. They don't know what it's made of; they can't detect that. But if it is sort of like a rocky Earth, they think gravity would be about twice that what's on Earth. So it is similar. However, when I heard this, I was thinking, we've heard this before. We found another Earth and this sort of thing. So I did look into it as to what it was, and it's actually it's the 6th most Earth-like planet found. So it's not. I don't know why it's saying more like Earth than the other. There's a scale called the Earth Similarity Index, which is basically a way. Can you guess what it is?
You can't do any of those anymore. You can't go. That's.
What I'm wondering before you say that is how. I just wonder if it's across purposes because more similar to Earth on a planetary scale.
Yeah.
Might not be most likely to be habitable because it depends on.
The Earth Similarity Index isn't a measure of how habitable a planet is. It's literally a measure of how similar is it to Earth in terms of. Like I said, they don't know what it's made of. If it's made of similar stuff to Earth, they know how massive it is and this sort of thing. It might not be made of anything similar to Earth, so it may be uninhabitable. But basically, on this function, it's from 0 to 1, so Earth obviously has 1. And it's a function that's basically based on the radius, the density, escape velocity, surface temperature, that sort of thing. and it's something that's used when they're measuring these planets that Kepler finds. So, for example, in our solar system, Mars is 0.697. So that gives you an idea of, like, Mars. You can look at that and say, well, it's similar to Earth, but it's not actually that similar in terms of, and in the terms of Kepler 452b is 0.83 apparently, and the highest they found is actually 0.88.
And that's Kepler 438b.
Kepler 438b.
And is that the one we talked about earlier?
I think it might have been. Yeah. So it's quite interesting. I mean, I know we've covered sort of planets, this sort of thing before, but I was just going to share a couple of things just more on Kepler itself in terms of the actual. Do share. Let me just get this picture up. So Kepler, the telescope that's discovering these stars. Let me just share this. This is a graph of exoplanets. So basically, what they've been looking at, and if you look at this, obviously, in when they first discovered planets around other stars, they were discovering them at a very low rate. Now, the Kepler spacecraft was launched in 2009, I think, and obviously there was a big, there was an increase. But in 2014, you'll see this announcement here, the amount that they announced when they actually got through analysing a lot of their data, it's massive. And in terms of what they've discovered with this spacecraft, they have 4,696 candidates for planets, or even Earth-like planets. So now they've confirmed over 1,000, which is quite a lot. And based on the data that they've got so far, they estimate there could be as many as 40 billion Earth-sized planets orbiting in habitable zones of sun-like stars within the Milky Way. So just within our own galaxy, they estimate about 40 billion Earths.
So are these planets in this
Goldilocks zone?
Goldilocks zone, this circumstellar habitable zone.
Yeah,
which is what it's called. And how? Right, if we decided, oh yes, let's go and investigate these more. How long would it take us to get something out there? How many light years?
Well, Kepler 452b is 1,400 light years away. The one that's the most similar is 470 light years away.
That's close compared to some of the timelines here.
And they estimate the nearest one in the candidates that they've got, so this isn't confirmed, is about 12 light years away.
Actually, you know what I've just done there as well? After berating somebody last week or the week before about confusing light years from distance and time, I've just done it again. It's a measure of distance, not a measure of time. Anyway, carry on.
Exactly.
Well, it's a measure of both, isn't it? It's a measure of how long light.
It's a measure of distance, right? Using time. Yeah. It's 12 light years is not the passage of time. So.
Yeah.
So basically, yeah, I mean, in terms of this, obviously these are estimates, but they're estimates that are being, refined all of the time. And using conservative estimates, they currently think about 1 in 6 stars has an Earth-sized planet. So, I think we've discussed this in the past, Richard, in terms of looking for planets. I'm fairly confident that they'll find that all stars have planets. But 1 in 6 having an Earth-sized planet. It's one of these things where it's like, people say obviously Earth is like this unique thing and all this, but it's not. Earth is not special in any way.
Yeah, presumably some stars that are sun-like will have planets. Presumably, because you've got to have
ones that have blown up or have destroyed their planets, or they're so yeah.
But obviously, if they've got a large gravitational field, then
it'll
the other planets will have a chance to coalesce and make their own objects. So
yeah. But yeah, 1 in 6 having an Earth-sized planet is fairly good. But yeah, that's what John brought up is the problem. Obviously, if these things that they discovered were close and they were, you could potentially get to them within a few lifetimes, there'd be serious discussions on, this whole idea of like, the human population migrating to these planets, or sending a probe to see how habitable they actually are.
What's the
But
possibility of it?
The distances are that great that you can't actually send a probe to it in any sort of reasonable time without finding some sort of wormhole type method of travelling. But they're still looking for these. I was trying to find out sort of in terms of
the age.
how
Actually,
many.
the age. It's funny that you mentioned the age as a factor, and that's an interesting thought. I think that's, we've had this. Me and you've had this argument before about the other factors and how meaningful they are, and I don't feel as though they're particularly meaningful. But the time one actually is quite meaningful in the sense that you need a time period for evolution to occur, regardless of what it's comprised of. Evolution will be universally true. So you're going to have that. So you need that. You need at least that amount of time to elapse, a few 100 million years. You need obviously the time for the geological factors to occur. You need for it to stabilize and stay the same for a while. But also the whole thing about, these are kind of wild theories, but a civilization sophisticated enough will either colonize everything else that it can, or it'll wipe itself out. So if you've got too long of a time, chances are you'll have nothing in that sense either.
Exactly. So
the Goldilocks time, really, isn't that?
Exactly. Yeah. So the planet itself, they think, is similar in age to the Earth, and I think they're saying the star is similar. It's the same class. So yeah, it'll be similar sized, a similar age to the Sun.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, if the star's the same class, it's going to be the same age, isn't it? Of course. Yeah.
And I like the fact that the orbit is so close to the Earth as well. So I mean that you can see why it's like it's being labelled Earth 2, which I actually thought was going to be one of the reporters that did that, but it was actually a NASA scientist who said that. I don't know whether he's being tongue-in-cheek with that, because it's unlike a scientist to sort of...
I'll tell you what I think would be amazing to discover, which I've just kind of thought of this, but a planet where evolution's occurred more than once would be really interesting. So obviously we've talked about extinction events where huge amounts of biodiversity is lost, as much as 90% or whatever, but evolution on this planet has only occurred once. It'd be amazing to find evolution has occurred again somewhere else. That would be also amazing. But imagine a situation where it's occurred twice, where this planet's very old, and it's gone through two phases of being able to support life with a gap in between, where some event happened where everything's gone, and then a few 100 million years later, evolution's occurred again. That would be really amazing.
But I don't know at what point Kepler's sort of like job is done. I think it's another one of these ones where its first sort of plan was to run for 3 years, but it's actually been running for how long now? 6 now. And I don't know whether it's sort of got a limited observation, like there's only so many stars you can look at and can only detect so much.
It doesn't have a reactor in there, does it? It's just solar, is it?
I don't know actually. I assume it's just solar. Yeah. So Kepler.
The interesting thing is that I've been looking at just the Kepler 438b, which is the one we touched on at the start of the year, and this new one, and this one's been rated 438 is still higher than the new one, but you look at the temperatures and stuff, and I'm still slightly confused why this one isn't as high as the 438b, because the temperature seems slightly better for life.
And that's in the formula. The surface temperature is actually the highest weighted
this is
measurement as well.
That there is the nature of me and Ross disagreeing about the will life occur thing. Basically, we don't know what the conditions for life are. We know what the conditions for Earth
for human life, yeah.
Well, Earth life. We know everything that's made from carbon-based life forms, but carbon-based doesn't necessarily have to be. They could be silicon-based. We just don't know, and it could be that the temperature of Earth is entirely unfriendly. Well, it would be. entirely unfriendly, but silicon-based. So,
I mean, that's an interesting thing. It's like, we look for Earth-like planets because it's the only
frame of reference.
The only frame of reference we have. It would be fascinating for us to obviously discover life. Would be fascinating, but it would be amazing if we discovered life and then found that life was much more common to be non-carbon based or something.
Yeah.
But again,
we might have to slightly alter our definition of life, of course.
Yeah.
But I mean, in its simplest form, a self-replicating thing that becomes more successful because of the adaptation over time, that's life, basically. So you can imagine a situation where silicon can do that, given a few 100 million years, silicon can do that as well. It might not be that exciting when people think, oh well, it's just single-celled, whatever. But it's still, that is life at the end of the day. That's all you need to make life.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
It'd be much better if we find like proper aliens, like in films. But
yeah. I mean, on the other planets on the Earth Similarity Index, they don't have all of the measurements for this Kepler 452b yet. So there's things like the habitability measurement. There's
so is Earth 2.0? Is Earth 2.0 higher up in that index then? Is that why there's a lot of excitement around it?
No. I mean, in the one thing they've measured, which is the Earth Similarity Index, it's lower. It's the 6th one. But the other measurements, which are things like the habitability measurement, which is actually to do with certain temperatures.
If we're finding a lot of these, then I don't understand why there's particular hype around this one. Then
well, that's why I brought this up, because I saw when the news did come on, and I saw it, I thought, yeah, there is big hype about this, and they're saying that scientists are saying it's the most Earth-like planet they've found, but it's not, as far as I can tell, on the current measurements. So why there's particular hype? Is it just one of these things where because we seem to be reporting a lot, there's a lot of science stories in the news recently, which is good. I wonder, is it just that it's being reported because we are reporting more science, therefore
because it's selling papers at the moment.
Yeah, reporting as Earth 2.0 because it makes good news.
Yeah, I suppose.
But yeah.
E.T. phone home.
Oh my god.
Negative.
Anyway, we are way past our bedtime. We should be putting this show to sleep now, I think. We've had a top discussion, and it's funny because we were just discussing before we came on air how when we go off topic a bit and when we go off script a bit, for us it's a bit more enjoyable. So hopefully it is for everybody else watching, all of the thousands that are watching. And as always, although I still haven't resolved all my problems with Google Chrome, that's another thing. I've passed caring now. Firefox is my new friend. Unfortunately, Firefox is still knacked when I'm trying to get my banners and stuff on. So, still come and give us your feedback, give us your questions. We'll try and answer them in the show. My Twitter handle hasn't been shown, but everybody else's has. Our email address is wonderstuff at what is it? wonderstuff@gmail.com. That's what it is. And our blog is at wonderstuff.blogspot.com, where you'll find show notes, reading lists, and bits about us, really. So why don't you join us next time for another exciting episode?
And also, why don't you join us last time? Because I've had a few people getting a few people to take that quiz that I did, and so far no one's been able to beat Ross's score. So I invite people to watch the last show and see if they can now do that.
See, I think that's wrong. I think if you were going to mark it, I would have answered slightly less sort of middle of the road.
We'll let you off, but unfortunately now you can't retake it with that view, can you?
No, I absolutely can't, and I'm fuming. Fuming, I am.
We'll have to do another one.
Yes. Okay. Right. I'm right put out now.
Because you did worse than chance, basically.
Yeah, because I was actually trying to go half the stuff it was fairly obvious that the answer was going to be what Ross has said. So I thought, well, I can't go with Ross.
Right.
That'll just be two people agreeing. Yeah, well, I think that's the same.
Next time, what I'm going to do is you've got to give your own answers, and I'll make it so that there's no curveballs in. They're all just straightforward questions, and see how you.
Okay, that's better. And no sitting on the fence.
Well, that was Ross, wasn't it?
Okay, so until next time, I shall bid you farewell and ask everybody else to bid you farewell. Say goodbye, chaps.
Goodbye, chaps.
Bye.
I'll see you next time. Bye.
Bye.